Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Talk Horror to Me. I am one of your co-hosts tonight, Matt, joined with Chrissy. Go ahead and say hello, Chrissy.
Hello, everybody.
And welcome to our double feature episode of the 1982 John Carpenter The Thing, as well as the 2011, I guess a prequel, The Thing. Technically, same universe, prequel. If we want to call it that. I guess I've never really thought about referring to it as that, but it straight up is.
It's a prequel,
It's a
for sure.
prequel, straight up prequel. So we're going to talk through both of these movies. This is the first one that we've kind of done a back-to-back double feature, so we kind of have double the slides. I don't know how quickly we'll run through them as we kind of like talk through stuff, but I think we'll probably do the 1982 version and then 2011, 1982, 2011, so on and so forth. So um, without further ado, let's hit the first 1982 slide. Do you want to go over the plot of this? Do you want to talk about 1982? I'll do 2011.
Sure. So, first of all, here's my question to you. Did you watch the 1982 one first?
Yes, technically I did. Yeah, but I've seen this movie. I mean, to be fair, the 1982 The Thing is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like I watched a lot. But the one thing that I didn't know how we were going to be able to handle is um what version we watched, because there's different cuts of The Thing. John Carpenter's. There's a director's cut, a
Mm.
theatrical cut, and different things happen in those movies. Um,
Oh,
so that's where I was kind of like, I didn't really focus on that. I watched the one that I had, and I'm going to talk about
mhm.
it and kind of go from there. But I did watch the 1982 first and then the 2011. So I watched it out of chronological order. I watched it in release order.
Do you think that impacted your opinion of them?
Uh, no, I don't think so. What's really funny, and we'll get into it more, but I like the 2011 movie quite a bit. So even as a prequel, there's certain things in it that I'm like, oh, that's awful. I can't believe you even bothered with that for sure. Like, cut this now. Um, but the way that they kind of started and ended that film and how it's seamless into the 1982 version. I love that. I love that it was like these movies take place like literally minutes from one another, basically. Um, that I completely enjoyed, but I don't know. That's just me. I feel like we're getting into the weeds.
So, I ask because I may have a somewhat biased opinion because I did watch the 2011 one first, knowing it was a prequel. Um, and then went into the 1982 one, and I think it did influence because the 2011 one is just so good
Okay.
that the 1982 one I was kind of like, this is cheesy. Like,
Really? Oh
well,
man.
there's a lot in here I have issues with, but then also really cool. But I think I just like the 2011 one so much that the 1982 one I was like, okay, John. But I still liked it. So I'm just throwing that out there. I might have a somewhat biased opinion when I'm giving these.
Okay. All right.
Some,
So we got our disclaimer out of the way. So in terms of overall plot though.
okay,
Yeah.
overall plot of the 1982 The Thing, the OG. So we enter Antarctica and we have a helicopter, except this person doesn't know how to helicopter, and they're shooting at a dog that they obviously should be shooting, but we're like, what's going on? And then it comes upon these people that are in this like outpost, and long story short, a person gets shot, the helicopter gets blown up, and then the shooter gets killed because he was yelling at some foreign language and then shot the guy, and the dog is safe. So yay, we're good. And then um they start coming, like, go to this other base that was near there, right? And they find like these burnt, like it all burnt down. And then they find like this weird grotesque thing that has like two faces, two heads.
Yeah, they're tr
And
they're
it's
trying to
the
figure out why this helicopter. They recognize the helicopter, and they're like, "Why the heck is this guy here yelling at us, shooting at a dog with a big gun? Like he doesn't have an interest in
right.
shooting any of them. He's trying to kill the dog." And so
So
after it goes down, they say, "Hey, we should check out that base. That's a few miles, over there. Let's go check that out."
Thank you. So they're gathering intel and they're like, whoa, this is like normal. Nothing's weird is happening. But then something weird does happen because they put the dog with the other dogs and then they realize that is not a dog. And there are some crazy effects that are going on in here that it's like, whoa, just the sheer wiggles that had to happen for this to happen is like crazy. And then, long story short, we have an alien that can morph into other things and look like other things, so you don't know who is actually a real person or the thing.
Or the thing, yeah. Um, well, so and this is one of the things that I was interested in. If it was in your version, if you saw it, if you didn't, or completely forgot about it, because a lot of the times I typically forget about it. But there's actually an opening shot prior to the helicopter.
Of the shittiest
Yes.
UFO you've ever seen?
There's a spaceship that you kind of see fly an Earth orbit kind of thing and then kind of crash. And
Yeah.
so basically what happens is, I mean, you piece together pretty quickly that a spaceship landed in the Arctic, it crashed, um, and you don't really talk about there being an alien or anything like that. But as time goes on and they investigate this other base, they follow some other tracks and they find this UFO pretty much kind of surfaced in the
Hmm.
Arctic. Um, and they piece together that this other team, that the buildings burned down, there's weird burnt quote unquote monster remains and other stuff, that they dug up something from that spaceship. Shit went down, and obviously now they're going to start experiencing the same thing. It breached its way into their outpost via the dog. That's why the guy was trying to kill the dog, and now it's starting to bleed into everything else. Um, what's kind of the main premise of this, and what I love about this movie so much, and I think this one does it a lot better than the 2011 version, personally, is there is this just uneasiness of not knowing who is who. Period. The it's basically a amazing like who done it murder mystery with a you know monster movie. Gory, just practical effecty monster movie. Um,
Yeah.
and I love that. The pacing is fantastic, and it's shot extraordinarily well, in my opinion. It's lit very, very well. Um, but these guys are pretty much just trying to survive, and they start to come to the conclusion that we cannot let this thing get out of here, because if it makes its way to any sort of populace, it's game over. So they do not want anybody to leave the base. They want to quarantine. They come up with a rudimentary test in order to test and figure out who's infected and who's not. And things just continuously get worse. Their situations continuously get worse and worse and worse over time. Um, but yeah, I love this film. Absolutely love this film. I don't want to like sing its complete praises now, but I'm curious. I'm curious what you think about it so far. Without getting into any other slides, let's give me.
It was good. It was good. I liked it. As much as I was like, meh, this isn't as good as the prequel. Um, I'm also the person who likes Ghostbusters too, so
So am
take from
I.
that.
Gosh, yeah, I am a
All right,
Ghostbusters 2 person as well, aren't I?
got him.
Um,
But yeah, no, it was good. There are some parts that I'm like, okay, so main character was played by whom?
Kurt
What was
Kurt
his name?
Russell. He's
Kurt
McCready.
Russell.
McCready, yeah.
Creedy. Why was he the guy that was in charge? And there were just like a few things about it that I'm like, I feel like I'm missing stuff in this. It's like rushed a little bit, and there's like a lot of things that you have to make a lot of assumptions or just be okay with a lot of incomplete information
I
sometimes.
think kind of how that came down was he's he's not a pushover. And the guy that runs the outpost is totally a pushover. And he
Okay.
he was taking all the kind of like tiptoey steps to investigate things and do this and that and whatever. And Kurt Russell's character is not that. He's like,
So he's kind of just the dom.
yeah, he's like, F it. No, there's shit going on. Like, if you don't kill this stuff, I'm gonna kill. Like, I'm gonna take
Okay.
care of this. Like, get the F out of here. And he's like, I mean, I think he even says at one point in time, he's like, I ain't gonna be the one to die here, right? Like, I know, I'm not the monster, kind of thing. And he's like, but I don't know any of you. He's like, and
Because he was suspected of being the
yes,
monster for a little while.
he was, yeah, and
I guess the alien.
he kind of escaped and essentially got hold of stuff, did his own little investigation, and he basically held everybody hostage with a flamethrower. So,
Like tied up
yes.
to a couch or something.
Yeah, he had a gun and the flamethrower, and he tied everybody up, and then that's when he devised his own test to start revealing who, out of who's left, who is a monster, who's not. But
Which worked. It was a blood test and it worked well. However, I feel like the cuts that they made were unnecessarily large and in odd places.
really?
Yes, one guy
Oh,
was
you
like
mean,
his
oh,
entire thumb bad,
I
and I'm like, bro, you could have gotten that blood a little more easily, I think.
I thought you meant like the movie cut, like the movie cut
No,
in
the
odd
cuts in their
places and unnecessary stuff. And I
hand.
was like, what? I was like, this movie's edited great. But no, I completely agree. Like the cut on the thumb, I said that same exact
Yes.
thing as I watched it. I'm like, why would you cut on an area that you use so actively? Like, if you just needed drops, like do it on the top of your arm or like your kneecap
I
or
know,
somewhere that's like
right?
really
I
easy.
couldn't.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
that got to
it
me.
didn't make any sense at all. But yeah, no, I completely agree. So
But the thing that you're always into is the effects. And this movie had really cool stuff. Like especially if you think like this was 1982. Like there were parts where this body just like completely pulled itself apart and turned into other things and
oh
there was
yeah.
so much like tubes coming out of everything.
Yes. So before we get on, I'm gonna get to the plot of the second one because now we're starting. There's a lot of crossover
Oh
between these.
gosh,
There's
okay.
lots of
Finally, I'm
crossover.
glad because now we can talk about the one I actually really liked.
Okay. Well, you gave the plot of the 1982 thing, so
Mhm.
now I'm gonna give the plot of the one that
All
you
right, yeah,
love.
tell me.
Okay. So I'll run through this. So, um, the 2011 the thing that came out, is technically a prequel to the 1982 thing. It ends exactly where the 1982 movie begins. It ends with shots of the guy getting into a helicopter with the gun, the dog darting out of their base, and him essentially going after him, to shoot and kill the dog that's inhabited in the thing. But the movie really starts more or less in the States with I guess a biologist. She's like an archaeologist, like a kind of thing,
Paleontologist.
paleontologist, but she specializes. I remember them saying something about that, like in the Arctic, like with ice. Like
Mhm.
she's kind of dissecting a not a woolly mammoth, but saber-toothed tiger kind of thing. She's doing that when she gets approached by basically another scientist that says, "We have a discovery. We need you." Or no other details other than that. It's in the Arctic. If you want to come, come. And
And
so,
she's approached because of the buddy who like she knew
yes,
from something.
there's a lab partner that knows this guy and he vouches for him or whatever. So she ends up going to the Arctic, um, and they basically reveal that there is a ginormous UFO, and on top of that, they found a creature, quote unquote creature thing, frozen in the ice, however far away from the ship. So they basically assumed that the ship crash landed, it got out of the ship, started walking, and then froze in place. So they cut this giant block of ice out of, and we're talking like probably small car size, right? This is not doing it justice. It's a
There
big
was a
block of ice.
they did the big block of ice thing in the OG one too.
That 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 scene is there. That room that's from the
They
1982 thing
didn't
is.
right, they didn't show us show the block of ice getting cut out or whatever, but that was the thing that I totally skipped over is they found the alien body.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So in the 2011 thing, it is actually them finding the body. They take the piece of ice and they take it back to the outpost, and they're all celebrating. Everybody's happy. It's wonderful. The scientist very specifically wants to take a sample right away, a tissue sample, which the paleontologist is like, "Are you effing crazy? Why would we bother doing that? There's so many like rules that we're breaking doing this." And the dude is like, "I don't care. I'm in charge." So.
He's
Um,
very fancy.
yes, very established like bad guy thing right off the bat. So takes it, analyzes it, and is like, "This is not of our planet. This thing is a freaking alien," right? Big celebration going on. Um, and somebody kind of goes to check on it, check on the giant ice cube, and just kind of look at it and whatever. Proceed to jump scare, and the giant monster breaking out of it and busting out of the ceiling, like just escaping from the building. So that whole room and that shot of this is kind of like busted open ice clump in that room
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is part of the investigation in the 1982 thing. After they look at this building that's all burnt down and busted and everything like that, this room is there, and you see the big ice thing, and they start to piece together. They found something, and it started to rip everybody apart. Um, lo and behold, kind of the same thing starts happening here. They start to realize that this thing adopts um, imitates cell structure of like people or whatever it comes in contact with. They see this under the microscope. They observe this. So this one's a little bit more revealing, not so much of like keeping the mystery. They're kind of a little explaining part of it. They get to a point to where it starts consuming people. They come up with a test of their own, and really try to start revealing what's going on. And in this one, it's a little bit different. The end sort of phrase. At one part, the thing makes its way back to its ship. It tries to boot that sucker up, and we don't know what else. We don't know if it's trying to leave, if it's trying to go somewhere else on the planet. We have no idea. All we know it's trying to go back to the ship, and the main protagonist is like, this thing is not getting out of here, not on my watch. And the other part is the dog kind of escaping and going on. So without totally getting into the ending with the plot, that's kind of how those movies end. It's a frayed splitting of characters. One goes to the ship, the other kind of stays behind and chases after the remnants, if you will. And that's how it starts into the 1982 movie. It's like basically minutes in between the two films, and
Hmm.
I absolutely love that. That is one of my favorite parts about these two movies. Um,
And
yeah,
and you mentioned like the ice block we talked about that you see in the 1982 movie after having known where it came from in the 2011. And then again, like I said, when they went back to the base at the beginning of the 1982 one and they found that like two people fused together, you see that happening in the
yeah.
2011 one. Like there's a few different things where it's like, oh my gosh, I in the 2011 one it actually shows when and like how that came to be. So I thought it was like a really good prequel.
Yeah, so let's look at the trailers kind of back to back because the trailers might actually have some of this in there. I haven't
Okay.
personally watched the trailers, but let's see. So let's this is the 1982 one first. Chronologically, this movie came out first. This is the second in the storyline, technically.
So if you watch it chronologically instead of chronologically the other way, this is the second movie.
Yeah. So the 20, if you wanted to watch it chronologically, you watch the 2011 movie and then you watch the 1982 movie. Um, that's kind of one of the things that I thought was really interesting is, the 2011 movie is a prequel, uh, but they basically had the blueprint, right? That was the interesting thing. It's like you go to the same place that 2011 takes place in 1982, and they see the rooms, they see the aftermath of what happened. So going into the 2011 movie, it's like there's the giant ice cube, by the way. So
Mm-hmm.
so they're in the Swedish base or whatever, and so that's kind of the thing is like you already have the blueprints of what goes wrong. Now you need to just make the story fit to make those
Yeah.
things happen. Um,
Like how fun would that be to just like backwards design the prequel of what happened? Like fill in the gaps.
yeah, I so there's a lot of that I'm like, this is great. They didn't leave anything out. The stuff that you see in the 1982 thing uh, definitely takes place in 2011. And there, I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
more than that. It doesn't feel like you're just beat by beat, oh yeah, there's an axe in the wall or an axe in the door, so we got to do a scene with somebody putting an axe in the door. It's not like beat by beat like that. But it's really nice to see how that played out. And I almost think that's why you should watch the 1982 one first, because then you kind of get that, like, what the F happened here, right? Like, what is going on? And then you can go into the 2011 one and learn all that. I think you should do.
Or
So here's the
or
2011 trailer too. I started
you
that.
watch
Yeah.
the 2011 one first because it happened first, and you want to get the story from the beginning. And so you meet these characters, you learn about this base, you see these cute little cars, and you're like really into it. And then all this stuff starts happening, and you've seen the
There's the
1982
block
one
of ice
because
pre-cut.
everyone's
Yeah, there you go.
seen it.
Yeah.
And see, yeah, they just get the block of ice. Everyone kind of has an idea in their head of like, oh, they did this thing, the blood test in the 1982 one, and then 2011 one, that was their first idea of let's do a blood test. But then things go awry and things change, and it's like you're right. It kind of is a very similar plot. Like the same things kind of happen from movie to movie, just slightly differently. But to have that carryover from like you see the dog running off at the end of the 2011, and then that goes right into the beginning of the 1982, and then it's like a callback to everything you just watched. That is why I'm very pro watching the 2011 one before
I
the 1982.
Yeah, so that is definitely one thing we will not agree on, because I feel like that so much takes away from the mystery and the characters of just like what the F is
Oh,
going on.
I'm
Because
okay with that. I'm totally a spoilers girl. Like you can tell me the
oh,
end of a movie and I'm still gonna love it.
well, but that's where I'm like, in 1982 one, you are on the same playing field as the characters, right? Like, while they're investigating this place, they're like, what the F, what happened here?
Oh
And you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what the F happened here? What is going on? What does this all mean? If you were to watch the 2011 first, you're like, oh, I know what happened there. It's like
Now it
you're
it
not in the,
takes away that sense of like, oh my
yeah,
gosh. It's
what is
more
this thing
like you can
capable
pay
of?
attention to all the like, whoa, what's it doing now? Which I also did watch the 1951 version that I don't think we're going to talk about at all. The OG one, and it was very interesting. There are some things that are similar, like the scene where they find the UFO is just hilarious. However, the creature looked kind of like Frankenstein, so it was like different in ways too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely different era for movies then, for sure, for sure. Um, so we'll hop into characters kind of really quickly here. So in the 1982 thing, obviously this stars Kurt Russell. He's the main person there. There's some other like who's. Wilford Brimley definitely had a name. Then Keith David went on to do plenty of things. There's quite a few like recognizable folks, especially if you watch movies and you haven't seen this before. You'll be like, I know that guy, right?
You don't live under a rock.
Yeah, it's like I know that guy totally. And this is basically a shot at all of them while he's doing the test. You can see the guys on the right have the rope there. McCready, Kurt Russell on the left, he's got dynamite, he's got a pistol, flamethrower, like he's equipped. He's like, I ain't playing games. Tie yourselves up. We're doing some tests. Um,
And these guys were not dressed to be in the Antarctica. Like, no. They were going outside in like their t-shirts.
yeah, they
Just fine.
definitely, yeah, they were a little more like willy-nilly, I guess, with some of the stuff, but um yeah, there's definitely some interesting things that happen in there. McCready is kind of the rogue. He's the man's man. He's like, I'm gonna take care of it. If nobody else is gonna take care of it, I'm gonna take care of it. Um, and his buddy, I guess you would kind of like argue it was his buddy, but like, Keith David over there, they they're kind of on a level playing field. Like they almost have a mutual. There's this like kind of bashing of wills because they're almost too much the same, so they're
Okay.
kind of colliding, right? And uh, when Kurt Russell's like, I don't effing trust anybody, he's kind of like, yeah, I don't trust anybody. That includes you. You know what I mean? It's like, why you don't trust us? I don't trust you. You know, we don't trust you, kind of thing. Um, so you get some of that kind of clashing between characters, which is sort of the point. It's a paranoia tactic, right? Everybody
Yeah, for
starts
sure.
to get paranoid of one another. Um, and in 2011, I didn't actually put all the characters on here. I put a picture that has one character. Um,
Nah, she's the most important
yes,
character, though, right?
she's the protagonist for sure. She's basically the McCready of this movie. Um, she's quite opposite though. She's more scientific, logical, thinks through things. Her test is
Mm-hmm.
a lot more like we are going to do a test and it's going to be processed in a lab. McCready is the like shoot first, ask questions later, right? And the way they do things is more or less like we're going to take a sample of blood and I'm going to stab it with a really hot rod and see if it tries to defend itself. And how the thing technically works. Um, I will say this: we didn't really talk about like the casting on either side all that much. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, fantastic in that role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm trying to think of anything. She was probably not as big of like a household name at this point. She was in Scott Pilgrim prior to that.
Right. Yeah.
She was in a few different things, but like this, I feel like was one of those first big starring lead roles.
Definitely before Fargo.
Oh, is she in Fargo? I didn't know that. I haven't
Yeah.
really watched
Yeah.
Fargo, so
I don't watch it either,
oh, okay,
but I am aware of it.
yeah. There,
I read BuzzFeed.
you re BuzzFeed is something I have not thought about or read in a very long time. So
So I keep up with the youngins these
oh, you
days.
have to. That's right. Um, this is another movie where there's some people that are recognizable in it. It almost kind of feels like the same way. It's like your main leads in both of these movies. You're like, oh yeah, I've seen them and stuff. And the other people
Yeah.
is like, I've seen them somewhere. Probably don't remember where, but like I've definitely
Yep.
seen some of these people. Um,
Yep. For sure.
and there's I think I'm looking at it because I now realize that the director looks, I don't know if he's Norwegian, Swedish, whatever, but there's I can't remember if it's Eric Christian Olsen. He's one of the guys that's in Game of Thrones. Obviously, long before Game of Thrones was a thing
Oh,
too.
really?
Yeah, the red haired guy with the beard. He's
Yes,
yes.
that's right. I did recognize that, and I was like, "Oh yeah, he was in this, huh?"
Yeah. So he's another guy that like went
He
off
was
and had
like
a
a
career.
beloved character in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean, he went off to have a career though. Like he's a movie star there. He's in commercials here as well, and everything off. Like,
And he was good in this.
yes,
Yeah.
the casting in this is very great too. Like, there's a lot of people that clearly do not speak English or speak English well. Like they were cast in a different country, and they had them in here. It all plays extraordinarily well. I love the casting
And
both
I
of them.
like you see the relationship between people more in this one, where like one of the guys who didn't speak any English was still trying to like help her and communicate her because you could tell like he trusted her.
Yes.
And so, like, I feel like I got more of that out of this movie than the other one, where it was, like you said, kind of the shoot first, ask questions later kind of approach, which honestly for them was necessary because that thing, like, tore everything that was in the room with it up in the 1982 one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what would be kind of interesting? That would be an interesting take. I mean, there is the primal instinct of just this entity that just keeps going. It doesn't really think about it. Its goal is to just survive and replicate, right? Like that. It's that she refers to it as a virus, which is kind of what it is. It latches on. It uses a host to do what it needs to do, and it keeps moving. Um, but the first, it'd be interesting to see like how intelligent, quote unquote intelligent, the thing is. If in the 1982 movie, it's a lot more just like run and gun, try to eat people, do whatever. And in the 2011 one, it's a lot more reserved because it doesn't know what it's dealing with yet, right? It's trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure things out.
Okay, I like that.
So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, from a thing perspective, it's like, yeah, I just ate and destroyed an entire outpost of people. I'm at another outpost now, so let's reserve it. It's like a chess
Right.
game. I know what moves I need to make now. Um, So yeah, I don't know. Casting wise, I thought this was great. Um, Cinematography. This is one I don't think we're on these slides now. So here's the 1982 one. Couple different shots. The the scenes where they go to like investigate, like the way they dress up the 2011 outpost is fantastic. That looks so good from just like a crime scene, like trying to figure things out. It looks fantastic. Additionally, the monsters and stuff in the 1982 movie, as you alluded to, it's like all practical effect. It's all
It looks
real.
so cool.
Yes, and it is done. It is like a go-to, like best in the biz practical effect, creating monsters, especially for the time. I mean, I things have only gotten better since this movie, but it is unmatched to anything in the era. Like I would even argue like Star Wars can't hold a match to this thing. Like,
Oh, it's
yeah.
definitely better than like Freddy Krueger and any of that
Oh, for
stuff.
sure. And some of the things, it's amazing that they're even able to do it in the 1982 movie. Um, 2011, I put two pictures here, the two right pictures, because there is a little bit of practical effect in here, but there's also more CG.
And there's some parts that look better than others, but overall, it was pretty good.
Yes, I think it holds up. That was the one thing. There's a couple shots where you're like, but for the most part, all the CG in that movie holds up extremely well, and most of it is fast-paced CG too, so you kind of don't even really see it coming kind of thing, or it's really hard to analyze it frame by frame, I guess. Um, I'm trying to think. I'll go back really quick for us to just talk through it with the posters because there's basically the next things I want to get into are the numbers side by side. We have reception and then kind of our recommendations for other movies. So
Okay.
we're anything past this is basically final thoughts, final review kind of thing. Um, I'll give you. I'm gonna say what I have to say, and then I'll shut up, and I'm gonna let you say whatever you want to say. Because here's the thing, I love both these movies. That's why it's really tough. I love both of these films. I also love the tie-ins to one another. I think the 2011 movie coming out however many years later, basically 30 years later, um, handled that with care. You could tell the people that made the 2011 movie were absolutely fans of the original. I should say original, the 1982 one, and knew like, okay, we have to have a scene that covers this. We've got to have a scene that covers this. We got to, how are we going to do this? We need to do whatever. They did that really, really well. Okay, and both of those things fit together. So that's my praise. Cinematography wise, they both look great. No complaints there. Casting wise, both great. Soundtrack on both great. The 2011 one had more of a soundtrack than the 1982 thing, but that's more of a John Carpenter thing. Like John Carpenter does his own soundtracks, and his are a lot more ambient noise. It's like dun, dun. The theme song is just basically a bass beat. Dun, 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 dun. The 2011 had a little bit more of a melody and stuff in there. Both great. Okay, here's the things I don't like. Where I'm gonna get into what I don't like here. Okay, the 2011 movie, the whole end sequence was basically a Hollywood exec like have to have this in the movie nonsense sequence, and I hate it. So the whole part where basically they had to make a bad guy, which was the scientist guy that kind of kicked things off, and they rush that guy to the spaceship to take off and go and do whatever the hell he's going to do. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, as well as Kurt Russell Light. I call the helicopter
Yeah,
pilot that's in there.
yeah, I could see
You
that.
could tell that's what he was. That's what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
So like Kurt Russell Light. There's a kind of a McCready-ish character in the 2011 one that you're like, that's totally Kurt Russell. They run off to take care of him. They're like, we're gonna chase after in one of the jeeps. We're gonna whatever. I'm just gonna call it a jeep. The snow cruisers. They call it a snow sled or something.
Course.
They're like, we're gonna chase after him and make sure that ship don't leave. That thing ain't gonna leave, right? Um, Basically, it comes down to like her running around in the spaceship, which I don't. I'm one of those people that is like leave more to mystery than explain it. Like we should never have seen the inside of that spaceship, never. Not only that, you kind of see like mystical, magical things, kind of where frequency was coming from. That's how they discovered it in the first place. There's also a ginormous monster, a ginormous The Thing monster. To me, that whole sequence is all like, as I said, it was a bunch of guys in suits in a boardroom that are like, but wait, where's the giant monster? Where's the big fight at the end of this movie? You can't just have them like everybody die and then a guy in a helicopter chase a dog. Like you can't end the movie that way, So that's basically I hated that. I'm like, we did not need that. We did not need this giant monster fight happening and chasing the protagonist around and having to try to kill that monster and like I was like, cut it. I would cut the last like 15 minutes or whatever it is out of this film. Maybe they just I would almost rather have had them just chase them out into the snowstorm and that be it. That's you don't know what happened to him. And then in the morning the storm's cleared, the dog darts, and the guy gets in the helicopter and they end the movie. So it's like in the back of your mind, it's like, oh, there's another effing thing out there, and they're going to this Russian base that's 50 miles away, or it's trying to get to that Russian base 50 miles away to keep doing whatever it's trying to do. I hated that. I hated that part of the ending. I love that they tied it into 1982 thing. I hated that portion of the film. Should not have been there. And that's all I have to say about it. Love both of them, hate that part. So your turn. Your turn. Rip it up.
So, like I said, watching the 2011 one made the 1982 one seem like not as good as it actually is, because I've seen the 1982 one a time or two before, like on its own. And I think I saw the 2011 one when it first came out, but like it was one of those things where I watch movies all the time while I'm doing 10 other things. So I've never actually watched the movie kind of thing because I didn't remember any of it. I agree on all the things you said that you liked about it. Um, it the good effects in both movies. The music was, yeah, there was never anything where I'm like, whoa. I was scared, like legit, watching the 2011 one. There were a couple times where it's like I screamed and I was scared and I was really nervous and I was like holding a pillow and not so much in the 1982 one. I feel like the scares weren't as scary, but I think the 2011 one was legit scary. I do totally understand your not liking the very sci fi twist that happened at the end there. And that's the thing, though. I like this was a sci fi horror movie for sure. And you got that right away with the alien at the beginning. And I mean, alien flicks. I always a big fan of Independence Day, mostly because of Jeff Goldblum. So there is real no Jeff Goldblum in this movie for me, and I think that's really the only thing it was lacking.
Oh man. Who would Jeff Goldblum have replaced?
Any of the characters, I
No.
could see him
It's
doing anyone. No, he
crazy.
would be he would be the crazy scientist guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I could see Jeff Goldblum as the
Half
bad
the
guy,
time.
as the
Yeah,
bad
yeah,
scientist guy. Like that would have been
yeah,
pretty great.
exactly.
Um, so something that's interesting. I was gonna mention it too, because I listened to a good portion of the um oh, I can't remember the name of it. It's where the actors talk over the movie. Why can't I think of what they call that?
Okay, yeah, yeah,
The
yeah, like the
commentary,
commentator.
director's
Yeah.
commentary and stuff. Yeah, so I watched a good chunk of that for the 1982 movie, and it's
Okay.
it's John Carpenter and Kurt Russell. They were both talking about the movie and their experience with it. And what's so funny about it is a vast majority of it is them laughing at how like stupid the movie is. They're like
Yes,
they're like,
yes.
can you believe that any of this works? And that they talk about Kurt Russell's like a ginormous cowboy hat that he wears out.
Oh
He has
my
this
gosh,
huge
yes, I was
sunglasses
gonna
and the
talk about that.
ginormous cowboy hat. Um,
That's why I said it just seemed so ridiculous.
yes, I
It
there
really did.
there is like, and that's what he was talking about. That he's like, yeah, he's like, we found that just one day, and he's like, I gotta wear that. He's like, that steals the scene. He's like, we gotta put that on. He's like, that steals the whole scene.
It did steal
And
the scene, and I kept looking for it.
yeah, I know. So it's one of those things where it's like it's great. You can tell they had like a gay old time making that movie, and It clearly was a small crew just trying to get together and like make a monster flick. Um,
Yeah.
but one thing that was really interesting was John Carpenter had to fight with the studio because the studio wanted a big giant monster scene at the end of the thing. They didn't want it to end with just two
Mm,
people sitting there and you trying to figure out, is one of them the thing or is one of them not? Which
right.
John Carpenter confirmed one of them is, by the way. He said if you look, if you watch close enough and you learned everything you did from the film, you would realize who is a thing and who is not.
Okay, so I need to go back and
Yes,
look at who has any kind of metal
I know who it
and
is.
who's missing it.
I
You
yes,
do?
I do. But you can just watch it and you'll see.
Who is it?
No, you can watch it and you'll see. And if you don't get it, you can look it up. Or I'll tell you if you don't get it. But yeah. So anyway, that's a great part of the mystery. And there is deleted footage of this giant monster fight. It was stop motion because of the way they had to do it, and it just
Okay,
and
yeah, yeah,
they were
yeah.
like, nope. The moment they saw that, like conceptually and how they put it together, they're like, this looks awful. They're like, this is not going in this movie. Not doing it. And
Good. I'm glad they
yeah, so
didn't.
they 86'd it for sure. But apparently 30 years later, man, that same executive still in charge. It was like, hey, we gotta have a giant monster
Oh
fight at the end of the
yes,
movie.
where's that
Where's
monster? I
that
promise.
monster? Yeah, waving his cane in the air. So
Or cowbell.
yeah, so they got that. They got that in the 1980s. They were able to accent. So um, okay, let's go by the numbers because this was kind of interesting to me. So side by side in 1982, length of the movies are about the same. The 1982 movie, I think the theatrical
Okay.
cut is only about 4 minutes longer, not even 3 minutes longer. The budget was $15 million. Okay, adjusted for 2011 inflation, that's $35 million in 2011 money in 1982. Box office, it only took $19.9 million. Usually horror movies don't take that much. That they're usually the cheapest to make, and they have the opportunity to make the most money. Um,
Mm.
and that's usually because they kids needed something to do around Halloween. They wanted to get kids in seats to watch a scary movie in October. So October was the bread and butter time. The Thing came out in 1982 in June, so not exactly get to the
A
theaters.
summer horror movie that took place in Antarctica.
Yes, yeah. And what on top of that, um, it was only released domestically. It was not a global release movie. So the box office numbers that are here are 100% from the United States, which it's pretty good money. So 19.9 mil, so $20 million. It grossed 5 million more than the budget, which today would be absolute disaster, absolute flop. They would say this was a trash movie. It did horrible because
They would compare it to Gigli.
do people still compare things to that movie? Is that
I did.
well, you're the only one. You're the only one. Um,
I'm keeping
so
it
you're cute, exactly. So on top of that, uh, adjusted for inflation, 2011, it's about $44 million, $44.5 million. Okay, looking at the 2011 movie, the budget was 38 mil, so actually fairly close to what it was in
alive.
the 1982 dollars. Um, Box office did less. It took in less than the budget was at about $31.5 million.
Oh
So yeah,
shoot.
so this movie was absolutely a flop. It was
Yeah, I didn't remember it at
and
all.
I knew that at the time. I totally knew that at the time. But what was so funny, and I'm going to look this up for 2011, but I did for 1982. Part of the reason why the thing flopped in 1982 is what it opened against. The same movies that came out in that month were Poltergeist, okay? So
Mm.
very big movie right there that people ended up loving a lot. Grease 2 came out. Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, which is one of the best, Star Trek or OG Star Trek movies that came out, um, as well as a few other things. So in terms of what it could launch against, not great. They could have picked a different time. I think this movie probably would have done better in October. But I don't know how much in 1982 that whole like horror movie October trend Like I don't know if that was really a thing because that was prior to like the Freddy Kruegers and Halloweens and all that other stuff
Right.
that made it
'Cause
really big.
if it came out the same time as Poltergeist, then I guess summer is good for scary movies.
It's I think they were trying to push it more as like a summer blockbuster and not so much as a horror summer
Right.
horror movie, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's definitely flopped against that. But I'm curious now. Let's see what movies came out. Let's see in 2011. And so that box office take too, that's another kind of, you know, sad thing about it. The 31.5 mil, that was a global release. So that's all it took at the box office globally. I guess I had a really strong opening weekend at like 9 or 10 million opening weekend. So it was looking like it was pretty good, and it stayed within the top 10 for a couple weeks. But past that, it didn't. It petered out. So I don't really know what to say about it. Unfortunately, the 2011 thing was a flop. The 1982 thing was somewhat successful in its capacity, but neither of these movies are really they're cult classics. They're fantastic. At least the 1982 thing is, you know, always in the top 10 greatest horror movies of all time. But they made no money. They did awful overall. Um, do you have any other comments on the numbers?
No.
No. Oh, geez. Okay. Well, let's see if you're right or not here, Chrissy. Let's get into the reception on these. Okay. So at the top there, we have the 1982, The Thing. Tomato meter 85%. Okay, audience score 92. Very high. People love it. I'm going to look at Rotten Tomatoes for 2011 now. Okay, tomato meter low, 34%, audience score 42%. I do not think that's fair. That movie, unfortunately, and I don't know if the reason why they're scoring it this way, is essentially a remake of the 1982 thing. It's for people that weren't around in 1982, probably haven't seen it, and they can tell a very similar story that way with differences, with minor differences, and a tie-in to the 1982 flick. Right? I knew what it was trying to accomplish. Um, however, however, I generally remember there being complaints about CG, which I don't think are fair. I think it holds up pretty good. And I remember a lot of like neckbeards in their mom basements complaining that the original movie is all practical and this was CG and like they ruined the thing, you know, whatever. Screw those guys. Screw those guys. But what I find it interesting is critic wise, through Metacritic, it's basically the same between the two movies. 1982 falls within the 57, percent there, and the 2011 is at 49. So critic-wise, they're actually really close, um, in terms of their overall reviews. And arguably, the user reviews are higher for 2011. They're better for 2011, and they don't even blow it out of the water in the 1982 one. So that's kind of I don't know. I don't know what to say to that. They feel very similar performance wise. They feel very similar gut check wise, but I feel like they're pretty different movies just from a if you like horror movies and you're looking for a certain thing, what you're trying to get out of it.
Yeah. No, I definitely I liked both of them a lot. I just liked the 2011 one a little bit more.
I know you do. I know you do. No, fortunately or unfortunately.
And I knew that we were going to disagree on this because I knew how much you loved the 82. And that is fine, and I respect that, and I agree with that. And we didn't even specifically talk about the head that was crawling around like a crab, which is, in my
Oh
opinion, the
yeah.
best part.
Yeah, those are awesome. So the only thing that I can kind of say like CG is able to articulate better is the fast-paced movement, the fast-paced happenings of things. So like there's a part where a guy's body basically just like breaks into multiple thing parts. Like the arm comes off and it crawls away. Um like the Thing from Adam's Family, right? That's what they call him, Thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
crawls away like Thing from Adam's Family. The Thing crawls like Thing. And it's just like this arm, and it attaches onto a guy's face and starts eating him. And there's a body exploding open with a giant whippy thing trying to grab people. Like CG does that really well in terms of the mess of things. When you have to do everything practical, you have to do it in a shot by shot basis. So it's like, here's a shot of body going, here's a shot of only the arm getting, ripped. Here's a shot of only this. And it's just because of the way that things were made and how you have to frame them and things like that. And that's the only thing that suffers. The practical effect in the 80s stuff is like so good that you kind of forget about it.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of my that's my take on it. Um, I'm looking at the. I can't see what movies were released in October of 2011 because it came out in October. The 2011 movie was a
Okay.
Halloween, queue up, but I can see what beat it for that month. The top of the list, Paranormal Activity 3, just decimated the box office during that time. So kids went and saw Paranormal Activity over The Thing. Uh,
I probably did too.
Second to that was Real Steel, which was the robot boxing movie, which is also a Walt Disney production. Okay, so
Right.
Disney dollars back in it. I actually like that movie, but I would not pick it over the 2011 thing. Uh, Dolphin Tale, which I don't know, it's a thing. There's a Footloose re-release, which is 2011 re-release. Moneyball, which is a big movie, Sony Pictures.
Yeah.
Puss in Boots, which was a big DreamWorks picture, still coasting from um, uh, the summer. There was a Lion King 3D re-release. I don't know if you remember the Lion King thing about, but these are all things that beat The Thing during that month.
Oh
So
golly.
there,
I believe that.
yeah. So there are definitely other like big movies that kind of came out at the time.
Yeah.
All right, before we get into similar movies, do we want to just rate it now? Here's our
Yeah.
rating. Okay.
I went first last time.
Let's
So,
let's do 2011 first. Let's do your favorite
oh,
first. So we're
okay.
our 2011. Go ahead. Oh, you went first last time, so it's my turn.
I think so.
Um, damn. Okay, this is gonna be tough because the 2011 thing, I do go back to. Even with the things that I complain about, it is one of those movies that's like, I don't know what to put on. I'll put it on because it's like it's familiar, it's comfortable, I like it, it's a great movie. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is smoking hot. It checks a lot of boxes for me. Okay, so the main complaints I have with that movie are the big effing monster and the UFO. Everything else is great. Everything else is fantastic. I don't even care that like honestly, plot points are basically exactly the same thing as the 1980s film. The whole test, the fact that it's infiltrating a dog. It's like all these different things. Like I don't even care that they're the same. I almost like that they're the same between the two, partly because it just shows our human nature. Like we approach problems in the same way. It doesn't matter if we even know each other, how far apart we are. We approach problems in the same way. So it makes sense that it almost takes place the same way beat by beat. I have no problems with that, but I hate that effing monster. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I I I think this probably sits like at like an 8 like wiggly monster arms out of 10. Like they have some whippy ass noises when they do that stuff and it sounds great. They go so I got an 8 out of 10 for the 2011. And I think that's pretty high up there compared to how we've rated other stuff.
I would agree with that. And I would build off of what you said and say that the only thing it was lacking was Jeff Goldblum, but most movies lack Jeff Goldblum. Um, and I really liked how scared I actually got while watching it. Um, I'm a sucker for like, sure, pack as much in there as you can. So I didn't mind that it really got into the alien thing because like it was pretty. Like it didn't look terrible. Like it was kind of interesting to
Oh
watch.
sure, yeah.
Although it could have done without. Um, and the only thing that I don't like about it, what the hell happens to her?
Yeah, so you
She's not in the second. She's not in the 82
yeah.
one at all. There's no reference to her. Like, what happened?
Yeah, she kind of just rides off into the snowstorm. You don't know
Yeah,
what happens to her. You know
yeah.
she's not a thing. That's
Mm-hmm.
all. Well, I mean, supposedly, but I don't know why a thing would kill a thing. So you know she's not a thing. Um,
But what happened? Where'd she go?
but yes, she disappeared. But you know, there's part of that that I can kind of forgive because again, the pacing of these movies and the timing of events happens so close together that it's it's like there's nothing you can. I mean, you know, you probably wouldn't see her in the time or the amount of events that takes place for the 1982 one. The other
Okay.
the other thing too that they do mention is um, they don't talk about the American base in the 2011 movie. They talk about a Russian base that's like 50 miles away.
Mm.
So what I piece together is like she took care of shit and she's probably driving to the Russian base. She's not going to the same
Okay. Yeah.
place that
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Because with the helicopter and stuff, they're able to go a lot further.
yes, so that's kind of where that's what I assume,
How
but I
you
don't know.
justify
So you
it?
just you don't like the open ended ending and the fact that there's no Jeff Goldblum. It kind of seems like
I love pretty bows, and I love everything being answered.
straight up, no mystery.
Um. Yep. So 9. I'm gonna give it a 9. I loved
Whoa,
it that much. I did.
whoa, we whoa. I
Oh,
will
I was surprised too.
I will say that.
But
Go ahead.
it's 9 like, oh my god, this is actually scary.
So
It's pretty.
so that's something that I was going to kind of mention too, and I forgot to. I won't hang on this, but they very much so kind of tell the same story, but the way they're shot, it does feel a little bit different. I will argue that the 2011 movie is probably a little more scary, atmospheric-y. The 1982 movie feels a lot more about the tenseness between not knowing anything,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that's why I really like the idea of watching the 1982 movie first because it's like you get all that tenseness, the I don't know, trying to learn things and the paranoia, and then it's like by the end of that movie you're like, okay, I've got a pretty good idea, and you can go into 21 and just enjoy it for the horror aspect because you already kind of know what to expect based off of the mystery and the findings and stuff, but now here's a little bit more of a horror vibe. We're gonna get a little creepier with the shots and the monsters, and again the score. There's not really jump scares in the first one. There are some in the 2011 movie, and so I think the 2011 movie is a little bit more horror-y, to make up a word. And in 1982 is again that more paranoia, cool practical effect, gory stuff. Um,
Yep.
so 1982, The Thing. For all of those reasons that I just listed, personally, I like the 82 one better. There should be no surprise. And this movie is, I think, absolutely a 9 in my book. It's a 9, chest bursting with teeth ripping a guy's arm off and bites out of 10. That's where I think man eating chests, 9 man eating chests out of 10.
That's a lot of man eating chests.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I think our flip floppiness is very on par because I'm going to give this one an 8. And the reason why it's less for me is because I like a good scare. And, like, you're right, the tenseness of it, even if, like, you understand it's an alien and you get what's going on, it's still tense between the characters because you still don't know who is the thing. So I do appreciate that aspect of it. However, like you even said, his sunglasses, his
Oh yeah.
cowboy hat
Yeah.
that he had flipped over his back, like they were just walking out, and I'm like, you are not in Antarctica. I'm not feeling this movie, and typically I can like put myself in enough that it's like this movie's awful, but I can still kind of get into it. And there were scenes that I just was taken so out of it, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Um, but it was still really good. So I'm gonna give it 8 squiggly
Okay.
things that came out of it.
Okay. 8 out of 10. All right. So we're flip flop on the two. We both think that they're great. We both think they're a perfect back-to-back double
They're good.
feature.
They're both good.
Yes.
No matter which one you watch first,
Yeah.
they're both great.
If you
Watch them at the same time. See how that goes.
exactly side by side and see if they might. You know, that's so crazy about that too. And Red Letter Media did that with the Michael Bay Transformers movies, all the first three
Oh,
ones.
really?
And it seriously is the first three movies side by side. They hit play all at the same time. They're basically the same movies, same beats, same ending of acts. Like there's it's crazy. I'll send you a
It
link
was
to that.
pretty
I will
funny.
see
Is what
send you a
I
link to that. But I'm curious as to how these play out doing that too.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, anyway, we both love them. There's no argument there. So I would absolutely recommend both of these. And if you want to see them in the order of events, how things happen, watch 2011 first, and then go to the 1982. If you want to watch my preferred and the best way of watching them, probably do 1982 first and then 2011. That's my favorite. But let's get into similar movies we'd recommend.
Okay.
Okay. So we have two here. Mine above here. I don't think you've probably seen this. This is called Frankenstein's Army. This is a really weird. Uh, it's partially kind of like the first half of the film, first third of the film is like kind of found footage. It's like behind. It's from the view of
Mm,
a camera, and it's like World War II guy. So it's kind of it's not a crank camera. It's a little bit of a crank camera, but it's got that kind of like really film feel to it. And
okay.
it's these guys. These Russians, I think they're all Russians, going into like Germany and fighting the German forces, and they basically get into this village where they find Dr. Frankenstein, and he was hired by Hitler to basically make, the Thousand-Year Reich or whatever it is that they called it. So he's there's a ton of body horror. It's all practical effect. There's weird you know, guy with a giant propeller for a head, an airplane propeller for a head, and just it's really gritty and gross. It has some of that like Hellraisery kind of practical effect feel to it. Lots of weird stuff in there. But I picked this movie not because there's a lot of tension in it and a lot of like we don't know what's going on, freaking out kind of shit. But the practical effects in it are so much fun, and it reminds me a ton of the 1982 The Thing, which I obviously liked better. And I think if you like that kind of effect in your movie, if you like understanding how all that works, Frankenstein Army is a great choice. Totally check it out.
And I recommend is a similar movie, Prometheus, because I am a glutton for prequels. I guess I just really like background information being filled in. And I mean, Guy Pearce, gotta have those cheekbones, even though he's an old
Ooh,
man,
Guy
in any
Pearce.
form. Yeah. Anyways, um,
You
so
almost got on a tangent on Guy Pearce, didn't you? You almost went down a
yes,
path,
I
a Guy Pearce path.
know.
GPP.
You got it. Like I'm okay. Who hasn't watched The Time Machine a million times? Um, so Prometheus is good because it's similar in the way that I think just the visuals of it, a lot of it reminded me of stuff that was in Prometheus. Like even when you were on your, I think it was the cinematography slide,
Hmm.
and it looked almost like the face hugger kind of thing. And so
Oh
there were
yeah.
some parts of it that like it actually reminded me a lot of this movie. But then it was also the prequel part of it and getting the background information. And then there's the stuff in Prometheus too, where like you do start to kind of question other people and who they are and what their like their
Motives and
motives
yeah.
are. And so it was kind of a similar feel.
Yes, I completely agree. I mean, like this is I would consider the 2011 thing and Prometheus both discovery movies, right? It's about a group of people learning about things and coming to conclusions, and it's a we already know what's going to happen next because we've seen the other movies, so we know what's coming, so there has to be new information in order to build off of.
Hmm.
um Obviously these are both two like newer shot films too, so they both
Yeah.
feel very much cleaner cinematically. There's a lot more you can do with CG and stuff. Uh, I mean, I agree with that. I think Prometheus is a great one. If nobody's seen Prometheus, definitely check out Prometheus. I like that one. There's a lot of dumb decisions made by characters in that movie too. So
Oh, so many, but it's so pretty.
it is a very pretty film. One movie that just popped into my head that I think would have been a great fit here, and it probably would have checked more boxes in being compared to The Thing than either of our choices, is a movie called Life. And that one has Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal and a bunch of other people. It totally flew under the radar. I've never heard anybody talk about it. Um, but it's in space, and they basically discover this little alien blob of life, and
Mm,
it's essentially um, it's indestructible. They try to kill it. They don't know how to kill it, and it keeps growing in size and killing people in
life.
their space station. Yes. And it has that tension of we don't know where the F this thing's at. We don't know what it is. We
Okay.
don't know what it's trying to do. We don't, and it's in the vents now, and we don't know how to, whatever. So, but it takes place in a very realistic space station. It's like the, ISS or something like that. It's not like the alien style space station or
Mhm.
spaceships. So, Life would be another recommendation, but I like both of our picks here for pretty much the two separate reasons. Yours is a very Discovery-esque, pretty science fiction-y. Mine is the gory, practical effecty side of both of those movies. So I think it's a
Mhm.
great split there. Uh, so I'll go ahead and wrap, but I'm going to give you the final word. Do you have anything else to say about these movies?
Um, Watch the 1951 movie too if you want, because it's very different, but some similarities as well.
Got to do that. I've never seen that movie. I should watch that movie.
It's free on Roku channel.
All right, well, everybody, stop watching this and go to Roku channel right now and watch the 1950s The Thing from Another Planet. Okay.
You got just gotta.
Outside of that, we're still here. We're on YouTube. We're getting all of our stuff on Spotify podcasts, and yeah, let us know what the hell you want us to watch, and we will watch it. 'Cause,
Until then, we'll just keep picking.
and I have no problem talking horror to you, Chrissy. So
Thanks for talking horror to me.
until next time, I